Assalamu alaikum guys. I hope you guys are all doing well. Peace be upon you all. As you guys know, it's been almost around a year ever since this channel has started, and one of the main themes of the channel is to always push ourselves and our limits. So, I wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the intense activities which have been featured on this channel. And today we're mainly looking at skydiving and bungee jumping. So, let's get into it. Skydiving and bungee jumping. So I thought it would be kind of a nice idea to kind of go over both of them and just compare and contrast them to see which one may be for you. I'll compare them in terms of the type of sensations that you get if you were to go through the experiences. We'll compare and contrast as well, and we'll talk about how they may be similar in some ways and how they may be different in other ways. And then we'll kind of talk about whether it's a halal activity. I think that would also be appropriate. Yeah, there's a guy skydiving, there's a guy bungee jumping. So this is just the first slide. Okay. So this slide right over here, I created it to kind of represent the fear aspect, right? Because obviously when you're about to go skydiving, when you're about to go bungee jumping, you might, be a little bit anxious, you might feel a little bit nervous. These are normal feelings to have, these kinds of fear feelings, your sympathetic nervous system, where you feel a little bit, on edge about them. Overall, there was actually less fear when it came to skydiving, and that's just simply because when you're actually up in the air and you're about to jump down, you can't actually see how far you are up in the air. Obviously, you had to ascend for quite a while, and then obviously your instructor that was with you is going to be talking to you and is going to be making sure that you're okay before you actually execute the jump, and whether you're mentally prepared for it, because you're gonna try. It's important to prepare mentally for these things, but obviously, like when you're actually about to do it, you can start to doubt. So when it came to fear in that aspect, I felt like it wasn't that nerve-wracking. And the other thing is, there are people around you who are going to jump with you at the same time, right? So it's really not as bad as you might think it's going to be. And then the other thing, and then if we're comparing that to bungee jumping, I would say the bungee jumping process was a little bit more nerve-wracking. And that's just simply because when you're actually in the air, when you're above the point where you're going to be jumping, you're by yourself. There's nobody who's going to be with you. You can see how far you're actually above the ground. So that's kind of you could say that's another thing that kind of gives you a little bit of worry, So I would say in that regard, it was more stressful. There was more anxiety, perhaps. This is what people generally tend to say when we're comparing the two. Maybe fear is not the best way to characterize it, but definitely like some kind of anxiety, some sort of, uneasiness. That's pretty normal, I think. Anyway, let's go to the next one, guys. So this next slide is really about support. So I kind of alluded to this in the first slide, but basically you have to understand that when you're about to skydive, you're going to be with someone, right? So somebody's going to be there with you, they're going to be attached to you. You're not going to be as worried as, for example, if you were going to jump by yourself, right? So they're going to place you with an instructor who can adequately carry your weight and who knows how to, obviously they're going to make sure you're attached properly. So when I was jumping, from my experience, I would say that I felt like I was just being carried by the other guy pretty much. So it wasn't that, difficult in that sense. But for the bungee jump, I would say that it's definitely a little bit more nerve-wracking just because you're by yourself and you need to make sure that the other thing that kind of, throws people off a lot is that you need to make sure that while you're bungee jumping, you fall the right way. So that was something that I know a lot of people get worried about, and they have a lot of tutorials on websites on how to jump properly when you're actually about to go for it. So I would say that definitely increases it could be another stressor when you're about to go for that activity. The actual execution of the jump itself and your ability to kind of train your mind to prepare your mind to go in for the actual jump itself. If you kind of prepare yourself mentally and you visualize like, okay, I'm going to jump this way, I'm going to fall this way, that will help you a lot when you actually go in for the actual thing, right? So that's what I have to say for the bungee jump. But yeah, when it comes to support, obviously you have to remember that with your bungee jump, with your skydive here, you're going to be with somebody. But this guy over here, unfortunately, when you bungee jump, you're going to be jumping by yourself. So just be aware of that. Okay, so I have this slide here, bungee jumpers, 1-0 bungee jumpers, right? Because when it comes to fear, obviously, bungee jumpers take the cake for that. Anyway. Yes, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about is height, right? So obviously, the inherent nature of these activities is that you're going to be jumping from a height, right? You're going to be falling down from a height. And so both of them are going to entail you being uncomfortable. And obviously, I guess I kind of covered this already, but when you're actually bungee jumping, you see that, like, okay, you're above ground and you can actually see the ground below you, which potentially gives you more worry, right? But when it comes to fear, when it comes to jumping, like for your tandem skydive, you can't see the floor. So even though you're higher, there's less anxiety in that way. So despite you being higher, it could potentially be easier for you if you jump from a higher level compared to if you're jumping from or if you're falling from a lower level when you're bungee jumping. So that's what I kind of wanted to illustrate. So yeah, I made this slide as well. Okay, who's the cool one now? Well, skydivers have somebody else, like they have another point with them. They have a point now, and so skydivers and bungee jumpers are equal now. Let's go to the next one. Yes, so I wanted to talk about this. Okay, how is the actual sensation when you bungee jump versus when you skydive, right? So the skydive, I would say, is they're both intense activities. As soon as you leave a solid ground, which is giving you a normal force, it's providing a normal force, it's keeping you stable on a flat surface. Once you leave that, you are basically, you're going to be in free fall, right? So you're literally accelerating towards the earth. The speed at which you are falling increases as you are falling, right? This is physics, right? But I would have to say, when it comes to skydiving, right? When you're actually falling from like 13,000 feet, 14,000 feet in the air, because the drop is farther and because there is like more there. You have to understand that you're not attached to anything when you're skydiving, so there's more room for flips, there's more room for like maneuvering. Because of that freedom, it will potentially be more problematic for you in terms of like, if you're somebody who easily gets nauseous, you will probably feel that nausea more. You will probably get that sensation more when you are skydiving versus if you're bungee jumping. Because when you're bungee jumping, the drop is shorter. It's shorter. It feels more intense. Like the rush that you get with a bungee jump is greater because you see yourself falling onto, like, you see the earth or the body of water getting closer to you as you're falling. But because it's not as far a drop, and because there isn't as much freedom or as much potential to flip, to maneuver, to turn over, you probably won't feel that kind of nausea. I remember, like, definitely the skydive was more nauseating, just because when we first jumped out, we were flipping and maneuvering all over the place, you know? And then obviously the fall was just longer. And so even after we had set our parachute, after we had deployed it, you know, you're still falling. And so it's not very comfortable for your stomach. But in terms of like the bungee jump, I would say the intensity, the feeling of the intensity is greater because you see the body of water or the piece of land below you, but it's more of an instant rush. It's more of an instant rush, and it's more you probably won't, once it's done, it's done. You won't feel too bad afterwards. I mean, obviously I'm speaking from experience, but you know, people have other experiences as well. So yeah, this is kind of just my 2 cents on it. Okay, so I guess both of them are tied now. So yeah, in terms of intensity, I would say bungee jumpers take the cake for that. Yes, so this is the last thing that I wanted to talk about. Is bungee jumping and skydiving, are they halal or are they haram, right? Muslims are not supposed to put themselves in harm's way, you know? We're not supposed to put ourselves in harm's way in which you could potentially or intentionally hurt yourself or do something which could potentially lead to your suicide, right? But you have to understand that when it comes to skydiving and bungee jumping, the actual, like, the potential for death is extremely low, extremely low. The statistics, when we're looking at the data, when we're looking at, okay, what is the actual likelihood of you getting injured or you potentially dying, wal'iyadu billah, we ask Allah to protect us from that. It's extremely low. It's actually negligible. There's actually a negligible chance that you're going to hurt yourself or you're going to die. You feel comfortable going for it, then just do it, you know? It's normal to feel anxious and to, you know, put it off. But the worst thing that you can do if you really want to go for these activities is you just got to jump in, you know, because the more you think about it, the more you contemplate, the more you ruminate over it, the more it's going to be a burden on you, and the more you're gonna stress out about it. So I think the best advice for people who are trying to go for these activities or for any other activity which is more intense, it's that if you feel like doing it, just go for it. Just go ahead, book it, set yourself a date. You're going to feel worried. You're going to feel a lot of different things, but just watch the videos, listen to everything that they're telling you to do, and inshallah, everything's going to be okay, you know? So, yeah, I just wanted to end off on that. But besides that, Stay active, stay fit, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time. Salam. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه قال: كنت أخدم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كلما نزل، فكنت أسمعه يكثر أن يقول: اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهم والحزن والعجز والكسل والبخل والجبن وضلع الدين وغلبة الرجال. رواه البخاري